She stood in the kitchen, barely able to hold herself up. Her body was weak, and every breath felt like fire. She coughed softly, hiding the blood with her sleeve, hoping no one would notice. But he noticed. And instead of helping, he laughed. Sitting in the living room with his friends, drinks in hand, he made her pain into a joke. "She's just expired goods," he said loudly, making everyone laugh. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She turned back to the stove, pretending not to hear. Her hands shook as she stirred the pot. Her head felt heavy, her legs weak, but she kept going. She had no choice. She had nowhere else to go. The same man who once promised to love her now mocked her illness like it was funny. He saw her pain every day and chose to ignore it. The friends he drank with had never seen her smile, never asked how she was. She wasn't a person to them, just a background shadow. The house was filled with laughter, but inside the kitchen, all she felt was cold. She wiped her face with the edge of her sleeve, coughing again, more blood this time. But no one came. No one asked. She kept standing, cooking for the man who forgot her worth, trying to survive in silence, while he raised a glass and toasted her suffering like it was entertainment. One quiet evening, after everyone in the house had eaten and gone to their rooms, Namboka stayed in the kitchen a little longer to finish her work. As always, she kept a folded piece of paper in her pocket. It was a story she had written the night before, one that had come to her in a dream. She had written it on the back of an old grocery list with a pen that barely worked. Her heart was in every word, but she had no place to keep it safe. Later, when she swept the floor and emptied the trash bin, the paper slipped from her pocket without her noticing. It landed quietly among food wrappers and torn plastic bags. The next morning, Aiken, the employer's teenage daughter, was looking through the trash for a craft project. Her hand stopped when she saw the crumpled paper. Curious, she opened it and began to read. At first, she didn't think much of it. But as her eyes moved from one line to the next, she became completely still. The story was about a girl who felt invisible, who worked all day but was never seen, yet still dreamed of being a writer. Aiken read it twice. Her heart felt heavy, and her throat was tight. She had never read anything so honest, so raw. She didn't laugh. She didn't mock. Instead, she took a photo of the story and typed out the words into a storytelling website she followed. She didn't even tell her parents. She used the name Silent Soul and pressed publish. By the time she woke up the next day, something unbelievable had happened. The story had spread like fire. Thousands of people had read it. Hundreds had left comments. Some said they cried. Others said they felt like someone had finally put their own pain into words. There were shares on social media, messages from people in different countries, and people writing things like, "This story feels like a hug I didn't know I needed." Aiken scrolled through the comments again and again, her hands shaking. And then she saw one comment that made her eyes fill with tears. It said, "I'd buy you 100 coffees if I could. You saved my life." That one comment was shared more than any other. People made art out of it. They made quotes and videos with soft music in the background, reading lines from the story aloud. Aiken sat in her room, phone in her hand, not knowing what to do. She wanted to tell Namboka right away, but she was scared her parents would be angry, or that Namboka might get in trouble. Still, deep down, she felt proud. She had helped something special reach the world. She had helped give a voice to someone who never had one. She didn't know how or when to tell Namboka the truth. But what she did know was this: the world had finally heard the quiet maid's voice. And they didn't just listen. They felt every word. The night had been long, cold, and full of pain. She had walked until her legs couldn't carry her anymore. Her thin clothes were soaked, her skin covered in mud, and her body shaking from the cold. Her breath came in short gasps, and her chest burned. With one last step, she collapsed near a quiet farm, right at the edge of the field. Her face hit the wet ground, and everything went dark. She didn't feel the rain anymore, didn't hear the wind. For a while, it felt like the world had gone silent. She didn't know if she was dying or just too tired to care. Morning came slowly, with soft light and the sound of birds. A farmer's wife had come out to feed the chickens when she saw something in the mud, a body, barely moving. She rushed over, her heart racing, and dropped to her knees beside the girl. "Help," she called out to her husband, her hands gently touching the girl's cold face. She was still breathing, but just barely. Without wasting time, they carried her into their warm home, laid her down on a clean bed, and covered her with heavy blankets. The woman washed the mud from her face, removed the thorns from her feet, and spoon-fed her warm soup when she finally opened her eyes. She woke up slowly, confused, scared. The room was small but clean, with the smell of fresh bread in the air. A soft blanket covered her, and a kind face looked down at her, the farmer's wife. "You're safe now, child," the woman whispered. Her voice was gentle, her hands soft. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her like that. Tears filled her eyes, but this time, they were not from pain. They were from something else, something she had almost forgotten. Kindness. The woman treated her like family. She helped her bathe, dressed her in warm clothes, and sat by her side every night. She asked no questions, only smiled and said, "Rest, you're home now." Day by day, her body began to heal. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but the warmth of that house, the safety, the care, it lit something inside her. A small spark, a forgotten feeling, hope. She started helping around the house once she got stronger, feeding the chickens, sweeping the floor, folding laundry. The farmer and his wife never forced her to do anything, but she wanted to help. She wanted to give back. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt human again. At night, when she looked at the stars through the window, she thought about the night she collapsed. She thought about how close she came to the end. And then she looked around, at the soft pillows, the warm soup, the smile of a woman who didn't even know her name but still cared. That's when she realized, maybe the world still had a place for her. Maybe not all people were cruel. And maybe, just maybe, she could still have a life. She started with almost nothing, just a few clothes, a weak body, and a heart full of silent pain. But in the little farmhouse where she was shown kindness for the first time in years, something inside her began to heal. She didn't talk much, but she watched and listened. The farmer's wife taught her how to make bread, care for animals, and manage simple tasks. Slowly, she grew stronger. When she was finally ready, she thanked them with tears in her eyes and promised to come back one day. She left with nothing but courage, and that was enough. She walked to the nearest town and started asking for work. Most people said no, some laughed at her, but one old woman gave her a job washing clothes. It didn't pay much, but it was honest work. She worked hard, waking up before sunrise and sleeping late. She never complained. While others gossiped or rested, she saved every coin. She ate little, bought nothing extra, and kept her eyes on one thing, a better life. Slowly, people began to notice her. Her clothes were always clean, her work perfect. One family asked her to clean their house. Then another asked her to help with their shop. Every job led to another. She learned fast. She never forgot a face, a name, or a lesson. Years passed. She moved from the small town to a bigger one. She rented a tiny room and opened her own laundry shop. She did everything herself, cleaned, delivered, smiled at every customer. Her business grew, and soon she hired 2 helpers. Then 5. Then 10. She never showed off. She never raised her voice. She let her work speak. People respected her. She took courses at night, learned how to run a business, how to manage money, how to lead. And before anyone could believe it, the girl who once lay in the mud, broken and forgotten, became the proud owner of her own cleaning company. Offices called her. Hotels trusted her. She bought a small house. Then a bigger one. But she stayed simple. No makeup, no pride. Just quiet strength. Meanwhile, he was falling. The man who once threw her out now drank every night. He partied with new friends, bought expensive things he couldn't afford, borrowed money he couldn't pay back. He laughed loud in clubs, took pictures with fake smiles, but behind all of it, he was sinking. His business failed. His friends left. His phone stopped ringing. The money was gone. The respect was gone. And he didn't even know that while he was wasting his life, she was building hers from scratch. He had no idea that the girl he once called expired was now a boss, a leader, a name people trusted. She never talked about him. She never posted about her past. She just kept working, rising, growing, step by quiet step. No revenge. No noise. Just success. And somehow, that silence was louder than any shout. Because she didn't just survive, she rose. And he? He broke himself trying to chase fake joy, while the girl he once threw away was building an empire. One honest job at a time. He walked into the office building with tired steps, holding a worn-out folder filled with old certificates and a wrinkled resume. His clothes were too loose, his face pale, and his shoes full of holes. He hadn't slept properly in days, hadn't eaten a full meal in weeks. The life he once had, the parties, the laughter, the fake friends, had all disappeared. Now he was just a man trying to find a job, any job, to survive. He clutched the paper in his hand like it was his last chance. The receptionist gave him a form to fill out and told him to wait. He sat there, head down, not knowing who owned the company, not even reading the name on the glass door. He just needed work. A few minutes later, someone called his name. He stood up slowly, took a deep breath, and walked into the interview room. He didn't notice anything at first, the fancy furniture, the clean air, the large window with a view. He was too nervous. He sat in the chair across from the one facing the window. That chair turned slowly. He looked up. And then, everything stopped. His eyes went wide, his mouth slightly open. He couldn't speak. Sitting in front of him, calm and confident, was her. She looked different, healthy, strong, glowing with quiet power. Her clothes were neat and elegant, her eyes sharp but calm. She didn't smile, but she didn't look angry either. Just still. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He couldn't believe it. This office, this company, it was hers. He was sitting in her office, asking her for a job. His heart dropped. She looked at him without emotion for a moment, then picked up his resume. Her voice was steady and clear. "You're here for the assistant position." He nodded slowly, still stunned. She looked through the paper, then set it down. There was a long pause. The silence in the room felt heavy. He couldn't look her in the eyes. The same woman he once threw into the cold, the same one whose medicine he burned, the same one he laughed at while she cried, now sat before him, owning everything. He tried to speak. "I'm sorry," he whispered, eyes watering. "I didn't know. I didn't mean," but his voice broke. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting his. "You didn't know what I'd become," she said quietly. "But you knew exactly what you did." Her words were soft but hit like a storm. He bowed his head in shame. He wasn't there as a man anymore, just a shadow of who he used to be, begging for mercy in a room built by the very woman he once destroyed. She stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. "The interview is over," she said calmly. He looked up, broken, but she didn't say another word. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't ask him why. She simply walked away. Because sometimes, the loudest revenge isn't words, it's success. And that day, sitting in her office with torn shoes and empty hands, he realized, she had already won. He waited outside her office all day. He had no appointment, no plan, just a desperate hope that she would see him. His clothes were dirty, his hair messy, and his eyes swollen from crying. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, hadn't slept in 3. The company guards tried to push him away, but he begged them, "Please, just 1 minute with her." Hours passed. Finally, near closing time, the receptionist walked into her office and said, "There's a man outside, he says he knows you." She looked up from her desk, calm and collected, and after a short pause, she said, "Let him in." When he walked into her office, his legs gave up. He fell to the floor, crying like a child. His hands trembled as he crawled toward her desk, dropping to her feet. He wasn't the same man anymore. Gone was the pride, the laughter, the cruel voice. Now he was just a broken soul, begging for a second chance. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "Forgive me. I was wrong. I lost everything. I need help. I need you." She stood up slowly, walked around her desk, and stood in front of him. Her heels clicked softly against the floor. She looked down at him, not with anger, but with something colder, indifference. She knelt slightly so her face was close to his. Her eyes didn't blink. Her voice didn't shake. She whispered, "You threw me out like trash. Now let the dogs take you." He froze. His tears stopped for a second. He looked into her eyes and saw no softness left. Just power. Just truth. And in that moment, he knew, there was no going back. No second chance. She had survived everything he did. She had climbed higher than he could ever dream. And now, he was beneath her feet, not even worth her hate. She stood up straight, fixed her jacket, and turned to the door. "Security," she called calmly. 2 guards entered. "Escort him out. Make sure he doesn't return." The guards nodded. He tried to grab her ankle, crying louder now. "Please, please. I have no one," but she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The guards pulled him away gently but firmly. He didn't fight. His body was too weak, his spirit already broken. As the door closed behind him, the office fell silent again. She walked back to her chair, sat down, and picked up her pen. Outside, people whispered. Some had seen what happened, others only heard. But everyone felt it, something powerful had just taken place. The man who once laughed at her tears had now drowned in his own. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just got back to work. Because her healing wasn't in watching him fall, it was in knowing she no longer needed him to rise. And in that one moment, with him on the floor and her standing tall, the past was no longer a weight on her shoulders. It was a chapter she had already closed. He was sitting on the cold floor outside her company's gate, head down, clothes torn, eyes lifeless. He had no pride left, no home, no one who cared. Days of hunger had made him weak, and his body shook every time the wind blew. He had come again, not to beg this time, but just to see her. Just once. Maybe she would look at him. Maybe she would say something. Anything. Inside the building, her staff was gathered. They knew who he was. Everyone did. The story of what he had done to her was no longer a secret. They watched through the glass as she stepped into the hallway, calm, composed, in a sharp black suit. Her heels echoed as she walked. She was the woman they all admired, strong, fearless, and quiet. As she reached the main door, she saw him. Or maybe she didn't. She didn't stop. She didn't slow down. She walked straight past him, her eyes fixed ahead. No words. No glance. Not even a second of hesitation. Her staff stood still, watching the moment unfold like a movie. Not a sound was made. He slowly looked up, hoping for a reaction. But all he saw was her back as she walked away, like he didn't exist. That silence, that complete lack of attention, crushed him more than any insult or slap could have. She had moved on. She didn't hate him. She didn't love him. She just didn't care anymore. And that truth hit harder than anything else ever had.